What's up, YouTube? Nick here, and today I want to talk about some of the most common bird calls you'll hear out in your own backyard. Now, one of the reasons I really wanted to make this video is because when I mention birding, it's oftentimes one of the first things that people will say to me is whether or not I'm capable of identifying birds based off of their call. I think this is sort of a stereotypical gold standard for a birder, and the reality is that it's really quite easy to begin to recognize a few of the most common bird calls, especially the ones that I can almost guarantee you'll hear in your own backyard or on your commute back and forth from work. And so let's get right into it. Today I chose 5 of the most common birds that I feel like I hear while I'm outside in my yard or just walking around the neighborhood. And the first one that I want to mention today is the tufted titmouse. Now, if you're watching this video and you're curious about how to associate the sound with the image of the bird, you can check out a previous video I made about how to identify some of the most common birds in your yard. So to get back to these bird calls, the tufted titmouse has a pretty characteristic call. The mnemonic device that people associate with it most readily is the song Peter, Peter, Peter. Now I should also say that birds make a ton of noise. They have typical calls, but also songs. They have flight calls and calls that they may only do at night, and so to only cover just 1 or 2 really won't be able to help you identify this bird in every single possible scenario, but it's my hope that we can establish 1 or 2 of the most common bird calls you'll hear and be able to associate those with the correct bird. But if you can begin to associate that Peter noise with a tufted titmouse, I think you'll be well on your way. Let's listen to a clip and see if we can pick up the tufted titmouse. So it was 2 in that case. Peter, Peter. And so in this particular instance, we never even got the 3 Peter, Peter, Peters that is most closely associated with the tufted titmouse. It was just a frequent Peter, 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 right? And it's important to remember that, it may be 3, but it could also be 2 or 4 calls in a row. But to pick up that particular Peter, Peter, right, there's a break in between. It goes slightly higher in pitch. Peter, Peter. And that's going to be your tufted titmouse. Now the second bird that I want to talk about today is the white-throated sparrow. Now this is a bird that's really closely associated with the eastern half of the United States and really predominant in the wintertime. Now the white-throated sparrow actually has a very characteristic call. I think once we can begin to master it in this video, you'll begin to see it in a few other places. It's really common. I'll be watching TV and it'll be a scene of, someone getting up and going for a run in the early morning, and they always want to play the white-throated sparrow call in the background. And it's just like that misty morning call, and I think that you'll begin to recognize it far more often once we cover it here. And so the mnemonic device associated with a white-throated sparrow's call is "Oh Sam, Peabody, Peabody, Peabody." Now just like the tufted titmouse, it's not going to sound like this every single time. But I really do feel like more often than not, it comes out almost exactly like that. And so let's play a call and listen. And so in this particular example, I wouldn't say that it was completely spot on. Oh, Sam, Peabody, Peabody, Peabody. It almost had a bit of a breakup there at Sam. But you can see that the general structure stood. And so remember that the white-throated sparrow is really an eastern half of the United States bird and very closely associated with the winter time. Right? You may begin to see them show up in late fall and leave in early spring. And remember that "Oh Sam, Peabody, Peabody, Peabody." Now the third bird that I wanted to talk about today is the mourning dove. Now this bird is really all over the place. It's sort of that grayish color, pigeon-shaped bird you may see in your yard. They're often in couples of 2, right? And this call is very often mistaken with that of an owl. They'll sing and call out right around dusk, and it almost sounds like it could be an owl in nature, so I can understand why the mistake happens, but it's really the cooing of a mourning dove. And so let's listen to the call and see if we can pick it up. Now you could hear in that clip the mourning dove cooing off in the background though. Right? That almost sounds like it could be an owl hooting off in the woods, or maybe even a loon way out on the water. But the reality is, especially in suburban areas, that this is more often than not a mourning dove. Now if you're looking for them again in the morning, look for that sort of pigeon-shaped bird. They're very often in groups of two, right? It's this cooing off in the distance, particularly at sunset times, that is the mourning dove call. I can almost guarantee you, if you're sitting out on the porch or cooking dinner with the windows open, you'll be able to hear one of these birds calling back to you. Now the third bird that I wanted to talk about today is the blue jay. I think a lot of people have a pretty good idea of a blue jay in their mind, maybe associated with their favorite sports team or a college they went to, but the call of a blue jay is really a little bit more harsh than I think a lot of people are expecting. It's almost a squawk. It sounds like it might come from an angry hawk calling out to other birds. Now when I was first birding, I almost expected a blue jay to have a call or a song, like most other birds, something sweet like the white-throated sparrow, right? But the reality is that it's this harsher tone that you'll hear throughout your yard that actually is the blue jay really calling out and establishing its territory to the other birds. So let's take a listen. And so there it was. You can hear it. It's this harsh scream almost out to these other birds, maybe particularly around your feeder. And so while you may have thought that could have been a crow or a grackle, even maybe a hawk off in the distance, to know that if you're hearing this call, it's really safe, especially in your own backyard, in a suburban area, to begin to believe that that was more than likely a blue jay. Now the last bird that I wanted to talk about today is the Carolina wren. This is sort of a smaller brown bird. You might see it hopping around down in some low thrush or in a bush in your yard. They're really pervasive and totally common on the eastern half of the United States. And on the western half, instead of the word Carolina, you might see something like Pacific wren. Right? Oftentimes their calls are pretty similar throughout their family. And even though it won't be spot on to the Carolina wren, for any viewers out on the western half of the United States, I think you'll still be able to find a lot of similarities. And so let's check out that call. Did you hear it? It went by pretty fast. Now the Carolina wren's call, personally, I think sounds a lot like a car alarm going off. Right? You're in the woods and you don't really associate, maybe your yard or the trail that you're walking on with somewhere where you'd hear a car alarm going off, and that's why I think it's so easy to remember it that way. It's that pew, 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 right? Let's listen one more time. And so, while Carolina wrens are really notorious for making tons of different noises, and I could probably make a video just all about the Carolina wren, I think the noise that I hear most often from them is this car alarm noise, this pew, 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 right? So if you're ever walking around and you feel like someone's shouting at you, all those pew-pews, right? You can begin to associate that with this smaller, sort of quick-moving, and almost a little bit secretive brown bird. And so that was it. The 5 most common bird calls that I wanted to cover with you today. And that was the tufted titmouse, the white-throated sparrow, blue jay, mourning dove, and Carolina wren. Now obviously there are tons of birds out there, and all of them make just an absolute ton of noise. Right? And so if there's any other birds that I didn't cover today that you would like to hear, please comment down below. If you thought this video was helpful, hit that like button and subscribe. I really appreciate it, guys.